Coach Garner here from hockeytraining.com, and in this video, I want to talk to you about hockey hydration. Look, hydration doesn't get enough respect for how big of an impact it plays toward your on-ice performance. So to open this video, I really just want to talk about the importance of hydration because not enough people are paying attention to it. They're focused on things like protein, supplements, whatever it's going to be. But if you're not hydrated, you're not performing, period. Body content is number one. You are literally 70% water. That alone should show you how important water is towards total body performance. If you are 70% of something and then you are dehydrated or deprived of that, how well do you think anything is going to perform? Muscularly, neurally, you name it, we are going to be at a decreased performance output, let alone when you consider muscle is actually 75% water. Your body is 70% water, but skeletal muscle tissue is 75% water. So if muscle is 75% water, how well do you think a dehydrated muscle is going to perform? It's not going to perform even close to its potential because it requires water for literally every biochemical reaction. There is no conversation of biochemistry unless it's nutritional biochemistry, because everything requires water, everything requires micronutrients, everything requires catalysts. These are all components of nutritional biochemistry, and you won't find a single metabolic pathway that's going to be active in the body unless you have water there to support that pathway. So we're 70% water, muscle 75% water. It's involved in every single biochemical reaction, health-based and performance-based and recovery-based. Anabolism through two main metrics. Number one, even slight states of dehydration have been demonstrated to elevate a stress hormone known as cortisol. Cortisol is catabolic, meaning protein tissue breakdown. It will result in the breakdown of skeletal muscle tissue. Even slight states of dehydration result in an increase in cortisol, which then result in an increase of catabolism to muscle tissue. So we have muscle tissue breakdown. However, dehydration also results in glycogen depletion. Glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrates, and hockey players have got to care about this because hockey is a glycolytic sport. You are utilizing carbohydrates as your prime fuel source in your training and on the ice. So any impact that this has towards your glycogen is going to have an impact towards performance. If dehydration results in glycogen depletion, then you can think about it as you simply having less energy out in the ice. And that's the real kicker, right? Because you could actually be excellently conditioned. But if you don't have the fuel to go do what you're doing, that conditioning doesn't matter. It's like having a really fuel-efficient car with no gas. Doesn't matter how fuel efficient that car is or how awesome the engine is. If you don't have gas, that thing ain't going anywhere. And with respect to hockey performance, you could have all the great supplements. You could have a great diet. You could have gotten awesome sleep last night. You could have a freaking great coach and an awesome training program. If you're dehydrated, you will not perform to your potential, period. Why? Because all of these are going to be dramatically impacted, last but not least, your delivery. The delivery of amino acids, the delivery of glucose, the delivery of electrolytes, the delivery of neurotransmitters and chemicals from brain to body and body to brain, all of which to support hockey performance depend on water as a type of carrier. If you want to extract nutrients from the small intestine into circulation, you're going to need water. If you want the blood to transport and communicate nutrients around the body, you're going to need to be hydrated. You're going to need electrolytes. This all depends upon water. So no matter what you're doing, you need water. And yet if you ask the average athlete, hey, how much water do you have per day? They've got no idea. And sometimes it's not even present. It's like, I have a Diet Coke, and then I do a Gatorade, and then I have a coffee, but then I like this tea from Starbucks. It's like, hold on a second. Like, what are we talking about here? You have the cart ahead of the horse. You're focusing on like what cool multivitamin you're going to get, and you're not focusing on what your body's literally made of, okay? So let's reverse that and start optimizing your hydration. Where we're going to start, your daily goal. Your daily goal, a good goal to hit, is 1/2 ounce of water per pound of body weight a day. So for example, if you're 200 pounds, 100 ounces of water per day should be a good target for you. Now, this will vary in some unique contexts, and that's why I say it's a good general target. Where does it vary? It varies between heavy sweaters and light sweaters. We've seen these guys at the gym. And some person might do a set of 8, and then you can use the machine after them. Another person might use a set of 8, and they left a lake of sweat on that machine, and you're just like, oh my God, that's a heavy sweater versus a light sweater. Of course, the heavy sweater has more depletion, and therefore is going to require a little bit more water to stay optimally hydrated. Now, another context that impacts your hydration goal is the body fat content, because muscle is 75% water, whereas fat is only approximately 3 to 5% water. So you don't really need a lot of water to hydrate a fat cell in comparison to a muscle cell. So if you have two athletes, one is 200 pounds, 8% body fat, the other is 200 pounds, 30% body fat, the leaner athlete is going to require more water because he has more water storing tissue in his body because he is leaner, okay? So that's why I say this is a goal, and it's a great starting point for you to begin your own personal observations and own personal tweaks to how you feel, okay? Half an ounce per pound of body weight per day, and then adjust based on light sweater, based on heavy sweater, based on body fat percentage, and based on how you feel. But I found that this target is pretty much good for almost everybody who uses it, all right? Now, outside of the daily window, we want to optimize workout nutrition, all right? What do I have here? I've got carbohydrates, amino acids, a 6 to 8% solution, and your electrolytes. If you can knock these 4 down with your practices, with your games, with your workouts, you are going to perform better, period. Let's start with carbohydrates. I'm not going to get deep into the biochemistry and strategy of how much carbohydrates and how much amino acids, because I've done other videos on that. I've got my hockey nutrition masterclass. I've done articles on that. And those conversations are very deep, just like this conversation is very deep. And in order to show a topic the respect it deserves, they need to have individual videos or individual articles. However, carbohydrates in your drink support hydration. A lot of people think carbohydrates are simply a form of fuel, and they absolutely are. But what's the second half of this word? Hydrates. Carbohydrates require a lot of water, and they carry a lot of water to the muscle cell. In fact, if you want to store 1 gram of glycogen, you're going to need 3 to 4 grams of water for that storage to take place. So, again, if you're taking carbohydrates post-workout to replenish glycogen and recover, but you're dehydrated, but carbohydrates require 3 to 4 times as much water as they do carbohydrate to actually be stored as glycogen, how much glycogen replenishment are you actually going to get? Very, very, very little. And that's why I talked about in the anabolism section that dehydration results in glycogen depletion, because you can't have glycogen repletion without hydration. They are one and the same. But carbohydrates hydrate a muscle when the carb goes in it. It's one of the reasons why muscle is 75% water. Not to mention, carbohydrates actually also pull sodium from the small intestine, more specifically the duodenum, the very first section of the small intestine. Carbohydrates can actually pull sodium from the small intestine and bring it into circulation so that you become hydrated at a faster rate if you have water plus carbs rather than water alone. And this is why you'll see in hospitals, if people are suffering from extreme vomiting, extreme diarrhea, and they could literally die of dehydration due to the severity of their illness, they'll have certain drinks, such as Pedialyte, for example, that contain sugar. The sugar is not in there to make it taste good. In a state of dire survival, the sugar is there to up-regulate hydration so that person can remain hydrated and live. So it's something that you'll see in the medical industry, but of course it's something that you'll see in sports science as well. Carbohydrates, very important for optimizing hydration. Next, we have amino acids. Now, amino acids do a lot of great things for performance. They reduce increases of certain neurotransmitters, such as serotonin, that are associated with exercise-induced fatigue. They have a muscle-sparing effect so that you don't break down your own muscle tissue during exercise. But I included amino acids particularly in this video because amino acids such as glutamine, glycine, and a few others also act as electrolyte carriers, and in very small amounts too. There's research out there in amounts as small as 2 grams of glutamine in a shake results in improved sodium uptake to muscle tissue. So the amino acids are there for many muscular benefits and many recovery-based benefits that go outside the scope of this video, but within the scope of this video, they help hydrate you faster. So if you were to just have water alone, you'd get hydrated a little bit. If you were to have water plus a little bit of carbohydrates, you get hydrated a little more. If you have water plus carbohydrates and amino acids, you're going to have even more effective hydration capacity, but you're not going to have it effective if you don't reach a 6 to 8% solution. What does a 6 to 8% solution mean? Well, 6 to 8% of your drink should be solid matter, and the remaining should be water. So for example, if you were to have a drink, 8% of that drink would be powder, things like carbs, amino acids, electrolytes, stuff like that. 8% of that drink would be powder. The remaining 92% would be water. And the reason why is we've seen in the literature that once you start getting over 8%, it reduces something known as gastric clearance. Gastric clearance is exactly as it sounds. If you have too much solute and not enough water, well then you're not providing enough water to act as a proper carrier outside of the small intestine. So then your body really has to do 2 things which are really bad. Number 1, the carbs, the amino acids, the electrolytes that you're taking to support your hockey performance, they're just going to sit in your gut and not reach to your muscle cell. So you're reducing gastric clearance for them sitting in your gut. And how well do you think you're going to perform in a workout or during a game if you can feel bloating or distension in your gut? You ain't going to perform. But what's the body have to do to get it out of the gut? Redistribute water from other areas of the body so that there's enough carriers to get it out of the gut. This means not only are you going to be bloated and distended, but you are going to be robbing water from other areas of the body just to get this out of the gut and then eventually to the muscle cell. So if you don't follow this 6 to 8% solution, you are hurting your performance a lot. And this happens too. People will add a ton of powder to a drink and then not nearly enough water. That will hurt your performance 10 times out of 10. Okay? It's something you can do post-workout because gastric clearance isn't as important at that point in time. But intra-workout or intra-game, you've absolutely got to follow the 6 to 8% solution rule. How do you figure this out? Well, your average water bottle is 500 milliliters. If you do 500 times 0.08, that would get us 8%. 500 times 0.08 is 40 grams. So 500 milliliters is your average water bottle size. You can effectively add 40 grams of combined carbohydrates and amino acids to that solution and still fall under the 6 to 8% solution rule so that it supports performance rather than detracts from performance. However, if you were to add more than 40 grams, let's say 50, 60, 70, well now you're going 9, 10, 11, 12% solution and your gastric clearance is going to be slower and therefore your performance is going to be slower. All right? Follow this rule. And then we also want electrolytes, okay? Lots of times when people talk about water, they think that's hydration. Water's not hydration. Water plus electrolytes is hydration because electrolytes are what actually allow the water to go where it's supposed to go and stay where it's supposed to stay. There's something known as an osmotic gradient. You'll learn it in biology and in biochemistry. It's not super important for you guys to know because we're more interested in application rather than theory all the time. But osmotic gradients, essentially if there's more of one thing on this side than there is this thing, well then we are going to transfer this thing over to this side. And lots of times that's actually how electrolyte balance and polarity works within the body. If we got a ton of sodium here and not a lot of sodium here, it will bring it from the blood stream, for example, into the muscle cell. And then sodium is now uptaked into the muscle cell to support reducing cramps, to support muscular contraction, to support muscle fullness, to support hydration, because sodium is also an osmotic gradient for water. So when sodium is somewhere, then in high concentrations, then water is going to follow it as well. Electrolytes are needed, okay? So just to kind of drive this point home, I want you to imagine there's a dead frog in front of you right now. I know you heard me correctly. There's a dead frog in front of you. If we sprinkle salt on that frog's legs, the frog's actually going to start contracting. And that's because sodium causes muscular contraction. However, if you were to sprinkle potassium now on that frog's legs, his legs would relax. That's because sodium causes muscular contraction and potassium causes muscular relaxation. So you need both, because sodium, what's a contraction without a relaxation? It's a cramp, all right? You don't want too much sodium in the absence of potassium, or else you're going to cramp up. You want sodium for contractions, potassium for relaxation, so that you have that good balance for optimal performance. But then you also need things such as calcium and magnesium, because calcium, again, if you're familiar with polarity, you don't need to be, but calcium actually transfers through an axis and will allow neurons to fire. So it's very important actually for neural performance to have high levels of calcium. And calcium is also needed in the last step for myosin and troponin to actually bind together and cause muscular contractions. Calcium's the last step there. So we need calcium for muscular and neural performance. And here's the real kicker. Magnesium is the doorman. So it's been seen in research that magnesium determines to a large degree the concentration of electrolytes inside and outside of a cell. So even if you have a high level of potassium, calcium, and sodium, if you have a low level of magnesium, then these three remain largely unregulated. So we need magnesium present so that these can do what they're supposed to do in order to effectively increase performance. You'll see actually a lot of people take magnesium to reduce cramps. It's not necessarily the magnesium reducing cramps as much as it is allowing potassium to go in there and reduce the cramp for you, okay? So we want electrolytes. And what can we do? Well, a good metric to follow is to get your calcium and magnesium from your diet, because you don't particularly want them in the workout window. And then during training, a 1-to-1 ratio of sodium to potassium is preferred, unless you're a salty sweater. Again, if you're in the gym and you see somebody who has, they've left sweat on the back of a bench, and you'll actually sometimes see that there's a white outlining of that sweat. Or in your armpit, if you sweat a lot, and then if that shirt gets old, it'll actually turn a little white in that armpit. That's salt. That's someone who's a salty sweater. I might move then to, like, say, a 2-to-1 ratio of sodium to potassium. But again, this comes down to custom versus pre-built. People always ask me, hey, Dan, what should I drink during hockey? Hey, Dan, what should I drink during a workout? Make it yourself, my man. Make it yourself. You want to have your own unique amount of carbohydrates for your body size and goals, whether it's muscle building, fat loss, and your current structure. You want amino acids to support your body composition, your goals, your current size, fat loss, muscle gain, performance. You need the degree, the amount of recovery that's going to be required for muscle cells after the given workout that you're doing. You need this to be unique to you. And you want to make it a 6 to 8% solution and add the electrolytes, because the pre-built stuff kind of drives me crazy, because people are like, hey, coach, I saw your video, man, but I'm just wondering what's one easy thing I could take. If you want easy, that's good, but don't call it optimal. Because if you drink a popular drink, okay, cool. So Zdeno Chara is supposed to have it. I'm supposed to have it. A youth hockey player is supposed to have it. My 9-year-old niece is supposed to have it. It's like, okay, wait, it starts not making sense really fast, because no metrics are taken into consideration for the size of the athlete. No metrics are taken into consideration for the degree of sweat that athlete has. No metrics are taken into consideration for the length or intensity of the duration of the session. And this is why I provide formulas in my other videos and in my articles of how many carbohydrates you should have, how many amino acids you should have. And then I provide guidelines, but not absolute rules within this, because custom solutions are optimal. Pre-built solutions are good, okay? If you want good performance, then just go buy something. But if you want custom performance, which is the best, I recommend buying your own carbohydrate powder, buying your own amino acids, buying your own electrolytes, and then optimizing that for your specific goals and body weight, and you, my friend, will perform way better than everyone else who's taken the easy way out. Because when has the easy way out ever gotten you the most results? I'll answer it for you. Never. Okay, thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section. Let's keep rocking and rolling.